Afternoon, ladies. Welcome to our second FS marketplace here in GFS. I'm so glad to be hosting the second CPD this year. Well, our CPD is under the title of Critical Reflection and Developing Practice in the Early Years.
Well, the question that is asked many times, and I know that you've been asked this question, is what are your strengths? Or maybe, what are your weaknesses? And then you fall in the dilemma trying to find an answer to these questions. Was it easy for you to answer that? Well, your answer will show if you reflect or not. So now it's time to take a sticky note and write the obstacle you are facing. Well, obstacle that you are facing in everyday life, obstacle that you are facing maybe at school, in your class, in your everyday practice. Think about it. Write it down. Then think of a solution. How you can overcome the obstacle. Now you finish writing, put it aside. So we will be back to it later.
So the content of this CPD, first we will be given a definition of reflection and reflection in practice. Then we will look for what is needed to reflect. After that, we will have a look at the different cycles of reflection and what we focus more on, the easiest one that will be supporting us to reflect. Then we will try to answer the question of how this reflection is linked to our daily practice. After that, we will go through the boundaries that prevent us from reflecting. And then the last thing is going to be the techniques and the process of the reflection in practice. So what is reflection, or what's reflective practice? Well, the reflective practice means more than fleeting thoughts before, during, or after a lesson. It means examining what you do or what we do in the classroom and why we are doing it in a certain way. When we think about our teaching, usually we would come up with the statements such as my lesson went well, or my students seem not to be interested today, or probably we might ask, I didn't like that lesson. It didn't go well. So, these kind of questions help us to make decisions about how we conduct the future classes. Would this be considered reflective practice? What do you think, ladies? Well, that's right. This is one way or a kind of reflective practice. Now, I would like you to take a sticky note and write down the obstacle you feel that you are facing right now. Just take your time, get a sticky note, write it down. Then think of a possible solution to overcome the obstacle. Done? You wrote it down? Brilliant. We will be back to that later. Now back to the theorists and researchers. They could give or suggest definitions to reflection. So here I got one suggestion that says reflection can yield more when it is more purposeful. Reflection is an important human activity in which people capture their experience, think about it, mull over, and evaluate it. That really give a valuable definition to the reflection. Another theorist, Crowley, uses this definition. Critical reflection helps us to develop the idea of how we reflect with more purpose and structured way using the term critical reflection. Without the critical reflection, teaching will remain at best uninformed and at worst ineffective. Thus, it says that reflection is an active process of witnessing one's own experience in order to take a closer look at it, sometimes to direct attention to it briefly, but often to explore it greater depth. This can be done in the midst of an activity or as an activity in itself. The key to reflection is learning how to take perspective on one's own actions and experience. In other words, to examine the experience rather than just living it. So, how is that linked to our practice? It is the foundation of purpose learning. So, as we said, reflection is an active process that witnessing one's own experience. So, after every experience we have in our class, we can stop and look. How does it work? Did it go well? Do we need to improve something? What can we do to make it better? It's really good to reflect on these actions, to examine the experience rather than just leaving it. So, what is needed to do so? There are two main reasons for using critical reflection. So, we can question our routine, convenient, everyday practice, and ask questions about what really does and doesn't work. We can challenge some of our deeper social and cultural thoughts, feelings, reactions, or what is called our taken for granted assumption. Here are some of the cycles. So we have Gibbs cycle, we have Kolb cycle, and we have Scone cycle. But for me, I feel that Gibbs cycle is the closest one to our everyday practice that we can use whenever we want to reflect. So Gibbs cycle describe a reflective cycle that is often used by education practitioners, especially like us, the early years practitioners, that would encourage clear and objective description, analysis, and evaluation of our experiences. That leads us to use this information in considering what we have learned from the experience and what we might do differently if the situation arose again. So here, as you can notice, the first thing is to describe the situation itself. Say what happened. Then we move to the next one where we could also state our feelings. How did we feel when that experience happened? What were we thinking about? Then we move to evaluate it. What was the good and bad about that experience? When we evaluate, we move to analyzing. Let's do the analysis. What sense can we make of this situation? Next one is deriving the conclusion. What else could we have done? The last step is to make an action plan. If it arose again, what would we do? This cycle really helps the practitioners to develop their teaching. John Dewey is one of the theorists that focus on the reflection and its importance, especially in the education field, where he stated, "We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on it." meaning that means we have to learn through these experiences. So reflective practice means more than fleeting thoughts before, during, or after a lesson. It means examining what we do in the classroom and why we do it in certain way. Reflective practice. Not only writing down the obstacles we are facing, that would be the effective reflective practice, but also the learning walks. When we visit each other's classrooms, that is also another way of reflecting. We see how that teacher or practitioner teach, what methods she's using. Then we can adapt and adjust ours accordingly. We take the best of each class and adjust it, adapt it, and implementing it in our classes. The next step is to respond positively to change. Never get scared from change. I know it's not easy. We get used to normal routine. But as early years practitioners, we have to accept the change. There is new outcomes, there are new updates coming in the field. So we have to accept it. Same like what happened in this pandemic. Who said that one day we will be teaching online? If someone would come in 2019 and tell us that, we wouldn't really believe it. But look, we are doing it. We accept the change and we embed it in our everyday practice. Same thing, we should accept the change. Look at the new strategies, implement them in our everyday practice. That's really important. Third thing is to accept the feedback. Especially nowadays, we are going through observations, the formal observations. Don't take the feedback in a negative way. We shouldn't take like these observations are treating our position or this is so bad, no one is allowed to come to my class and observe me. No, we should take it in a positive way. I was saying like this many years back, like, oh my God, someone is coming to judge me. It's not judging you. We shouldn't take it personal. It's evaluating the teaching, giving a feedback. Based on that, we reflect. The observer is coming to see the amazing things we are doing in our class. Then we move on and see what can be better? What can I improve? Getting that eye of the observer is really needed. So we have to accept the feedback, the observation, and the outcomes. Now, going back to the note you wrote at the beginning of the CPD, look at the obstacle. Now it's time for you to decide the objective of your next CPD. What do I need to work on? What's the next step? Do I need to update my knowledge? What is happening in the field of the early years? What are the studies coming up with? It's very important to decide what do you want to implement or what do you want to learn. How does reflection help us in or as practitioners? It helps us to improve the quality of work, moving from weak in observations to acceptable, good, very good, and outstanding teachers. It also enables us to view events objectively. It helps us also to transfer what we do well to other similar situations. Reflection also helps us to improve professional judgment. It helps us to identify where we can make changes or improvements in what we do. It helps us and supports us to plan for the future. It helps us to respond more positively to change. As practitioners, We can learn from the experience of others. That makes us also more confident and competent practitioners. We are also able to take ownership of our learning. It can show the difference between what we say, what we do, and what we actually do. So, what are the benefits of reflective practice? Increased learning from an experience for situation. It promotes the deep learning. It helps us to identify our personal and professional strengths and areas for improvement. Identification of educational needs. Acquisition of new knowledge and skills. So, what are the techniques in the process? Well, we need to look in and look out. What does that mean? Look in, find a space to focus on self. Pay attention to your thoughts and emotions. Write down those thoughts and emotions. Then look out, write a description of the situation, thoughts, feelings, emotion. What issues seem significant?
Self talk questions are also very important, such as: what was I trying to achieve? Why did I respond as I did? What were the consequences of my teaching? How were others feeling? How did I know this? Well, to sum up, the more you understand yourself, the easier your studies will become. And you will know what areas of knowledge you need to improve or what skills need tightening. Well, thank you for joining for today. And this quick CPD just show you how you can examine your attitudes, your goals, and your day-to-day experiences and use them to develop yourself both personally and academically. And don't forget, reflection should be in our everyday life.